We was on ambush. I was leaned up against a tree, and I had my M60 laying on my wrap, and we was about 5 foot off of the trail. Viet Cong were supposed to come through, and we were just going to ambush them. We were going to capture them. We were just going to ambush them. And we'd already been there for 2 days. I normally initiate ambushes because I had the M60, and I could let off a lot more rounds than the M16s, and you can't do the 40 mic that close, so I usually start the ambushes, and luckily nobody had come through that night, but I was leaning up against a tree and I had my legs spread apart. It was dark. It was probably about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I felt something hit my leg. And I wore Levi's, and I kept my Levi's duct tape, so stuff didn't crawl up your pant leg like leeches. I didn't mind them getting on my feet. You could pull them off, but you weren't crawling up and doing all kind of other damage. Anyway, I felt this bump on my leg, and I said, oh man. I said, what was that? Sitting there real quiet, and I feel it crawling. And it was a snake. It might have been about 5 foot long. And of course, you know, your crotches it's cold at night in Vietnam, simply for the fact it's just always wet. The nights are always chilly, but your crotch is warm. That snake crawled up in between my crotch, and that's where it stayed for the rest of the night. And of course, I couldn't tell nobody because we kept a distance of maybe, 5-10 foot away, and you can't talk. We didn't have communications like we did today. Everybody has their microphones and they're whispering and all that. Didn't have it. We had our PR. That radio weighed 40 pounds and looked like it came from World War II. So I'm sitting there and I'm going, if these Vietnamese come by, I said, I'm not going to initiate a firefight. I said, I don't know what this is between my legs. Because they had snakes over there. If they bite you, you ain't making it. They had all kinds of snakes. They had some non-poison, but they got more poisonous snakes in Vietnam you shake a stick at. And I'm going, I said, I ain't moving if somebody comes through. And luckily nobody came through that night. And when daybreak started coming, crawled down the other side of my leg and went off into the water. After that, I didn't sit with my legs spread open anymore. We was on a 3-day op. We have mosquito liquid comes in a bottle. Most potent stuff you ever wanted to see. Well, I carried my bottle in my pocket because I was allergic to mosquitoes over there. Sometimes I would get bit and my eyes would swell shut and they'd have to lead me back because I couldn't see. I don't know what it was. I never got malaria, but I couldn't handle the mosquito bites, and they always wanted to attack my face. So that's where I would put that mosquito spray. It'd work until you sweat so much and it's not on there anymore. Well, the bottle broke in my pocket. Well, that's where it broke, right in my private area. And that was on the first night. By the second day, that stuff was eating a hole because I couldn't get it out of my Levi's. And Levi's just soaked up that mosquito spray and it was just eating the skin off of my privates. Well, the third day came, we set up 3 days early because we wanted to catch this tax collector. The pain was so bad, I was trying to think of something to do to get my mind off of it because I wasn't going to make any noise and I wasn't going to tell my boss. I had a tree that was in front of me and I had a Gerber knife. I went over with a Gerber, which was illegal back then because it was double-edged. Well, I sat there and I was sitting there stabbing this tree. And that knife would just go in and go all the way through, and I'd bring it out, and I'd push it in, and I'd bring it out, and I'd push it in. And I've been doing it for hours, but it was keeping my mind off of what my real problem was. And I pushed it in, and then I heard this noise. It went. I said, "Oh, whoa, whoa!" And I pulled it out because it was a thin blade, and when I pulled it out that last time, you could just hear it starting to crack. And in the jungle it's quiet at nighttime. You don't hear nothing. It just pitch quiet. But this crack, crack, it was like echoing. And I'm going, oh, please don't. And I take my hand and I grab a hold of the tree and I hold it with my hands. but it's going down. It was about 15 foot tall. It just started making this, because it wasn't just like you pushed it over. It just started making this cracking sound. And then it started getting louder and louder, and next thing I know, it just started bending over. Well, I'm covered in trees, so it's hitting all the trees, making all kind of racket, and finally thuds and hits the ground. My boss just literally came unglued. Of course, that means we were compromised. We wasted 2.5 days laying in this one spot waiting for this guy. So we decided, call it quits, and called our boat in and all that stuff. And when I got back, man, he just started chewing me out. And I told him, I said, boss, I said, I was just in literally pain. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, hold on, man. I pulled down my pants. It looked like raw meat. My thighs were gone. I thought I would get gangrene and die. But after that, I said, I'll never carry mosquito spray in your pocket again. A plastic bottle. And it was a plastic bottle I used over and over again. I would just fill it up because it was only small. But once it opened, but it just covered up everything. And I said, oh, man, it's not good. We would always go over the op the day before. We had a room where all of our operations were done. Nobody could hear you. We had guards on the outside, and that's where we did our ops, just in case some Vietnamese was listening and want to tell. And we let it known that if our guides led us into an op, they were the first ones that were going to get shot. Because he said, these are secret. Nobody knows. We're not telling. We don't even tell our command where we're going. We let them know what area we're operating in, because we helped set sensors all over Vietnam. Even back then they had sensors. And we'd go out in the jungle and put sensors all over the place. So somebody that's listening and we're going to be in that area, they know it's going to be us. They don't necessarily know exactly where we're at, but they know if we pass through these sensors that we buried in the ground, it was us coming through, especially if we tell them when we're going to be there. Now, if somebody else is coming through and we're not in that area, they can light it up. In op, we was probably about 15 clicks away from base camp that we were going on, and it was an area that we had already sent sensors. So, and there was only 7 of us. So I had about a couple hours before we got to where we were going, and we get a radio call from somebody that's listening, and we wanted to know if we're in that area. And we go, yeah. And he said, well, there's about 100 troops following you. And we go, do what? He said, there's about 100 troops following you. We've been counting them as they go by. He said, and they're following your trail. And we go, dang. I said, there's 7 of us and 100 of them. So we go, well, we're going to pull off. So we get off of that trail we're going. We went deeper into the jungle. And it was right outside of a Vietnamese hamlet. Would have been Viet Cong and Vietnamese. They lived together. For some reason, they would never squeal on a Viet Cong. They know that sooner or later it'd get back. Well, it was about 20 minutes later. They were NVA, North Vietnamese. And when they came into the hamlet, they started waking everybody up, wanting to know where the Americans were. Of course, they had no idea. As we was laying off maybe 50 foot from where the hooches were. Oh, and just at that time, during that time, our radio went out. They were good and it was raining. And temperature was the water and so forth. But we couldn't call nobody because we couldn't call in an airstrike. Even then, you didn't want to kill Vietnamese civilians. So you couldn't call in an airstrike. Couldn't call them for support. Couldn't call anybody to come get us. And for 2-3 hours, they were beating the bush and yelling back and forth. And we're just laying flat as can be, hoping they don't make it this far, It would have been a good fight. for a little while, but we never had no support, so we might have just run. And it's hard to run in the jungle and all that equipment. We have run before, but we were too far away that we could never made it anywhere. They eventually moved on. They thought we pulled into that hamlet and took refuge, but we didn't. Went off the beaten path and hid. Oh yeah, we had a $10,000 reward if one of us could be captured dead or alive. So there was a bounty on our head. They didn't think we could be killed because up until then there weren't that many killed out in the field. They weren't actually killed doing ops. It was stupid stuff that that happened. Like we had one guy was taking a mortar apart inside the hooch, and it went off, and I think it killed 6, 7 guys. And we had 5 guys that got killed. They were through with their tour, and they knew a bunch of the guys that were coming in, and they decided to take a helicopter. They had a couple more days before their flight left Vietnam. They was going to take a helicopter ride to go see their buddies, and the helicopter crashed. Got shot down. As far as getting killed in the field, there weren't a whole lot, and we never left anybody behind. They thought we couldn't because, you know, when you go inside of a Viet Cong hamlet and you kidnap somebody, you know, it's not like doing it in Houston, you know. It's in the jungle, and you're going inside their hooch. It's made out of thatch. It makes noise. And you grab somebody and they wake up in the morning and the buddy's gone and not to be seen again. And it put a fear on them that we were night walkers. They called us the men with green faces, so we always were painted up. We actually captured somebody that we had captured. We turned him over to the Vietnamese government, and we proved to them that he was a Viet Cong, and they let him go. And it was like a month later, we was doing another op, and we captured the same guy. We're going, and we really had a fit with the Vietnamese government. We're going, why we, you know, my boss, you know, went to Saigon and go talk to our top brass. Why are we capturing people? And we turn them to the Vietnamese government, and they let them go, and we capture them again. They said, this isn't right. Well, yeah, we had no way to keep them, but we let them know that, you know, hey, this is number 2 that we caught at the same time. You know, same guy. You can't let him go. But he might have had somebody in the Vietnamese government that was his brother-in-law, who knows what, and they let him go.